Hello everyone, hope y'all are doing well. This is 3D printed animatronic creature part 33, mold designing. Now in a previous video, I think it was part 29 where you saw me kind of making these frames for molding. Well, now it was kind of time for me to sit back and this is pretty tedious work here. I mean, I put about, I guess it was 6 hours of video that I shot, and it just in a nutshell, to show y'all what I was basically doing and having to design these where this is going to be a mother mold to where I can pour silicone in these molds with it's going to have a divider. So I'd have to pour, the back first, and then I'd come back and pour the front part second. And, and it's a lot of designing, and you have your flow levels because you don't want to put like your vents in the wrong place or your pour spouts in the wrong place. But here I'm putting screw points in this frame, and y'all had seen the frame in an existing video that I done, part 29, and I had done some previous other tests, just testing these so-called theories on how to make this mold. And mold making is an art form, and I really enjoy making molds. But as you see here, I'm putting the screw points because this is going to have to be, I guess, bolted together with 4 millimeter screws and with washers just to give it more strength when I'm tightening uh, these bolts and screws in place to just hold the frame and to hold it to the base plate and just to be a good solid structure. But after I did that plate, the main new plate on the back mold, I just copied it and pasted so I can just transfer it to the front flat edge of its mold, and we'll have the same, flat edge with the screw points. So all the screw points will match from the front frame to the second frame. Now this molding design here, it needs to be robust because it's going to be holding silicone for the molding of the skin. Plus it's going to be holding the skin. So it needs to be kind of robust just to hold. And what I'm working on now, these two frames would be considered the mother mold that will hold this together. And you really don't want it to be able to come out or come off out of it. It's got to have its own kind of a socket for this part of the silicone to fit inside this frame here. It will be able to be removed from the frame, but it will be able to go back in place and lock in place. Because I really don't want any of the silicone, even though the shore of the silicone is going to be a 30 shore, and the thickness should give it the strength to keep its shape. So, because you really wouldn't want it to sag at the top, or if you poured it, if it sagged a little bit, it could be bumping. If it was too soft, it would be hitting the core, and then you wouldn't be able to pour your skin. But what I was doing with these screws here, I made these screws, and then I was calculating that, well, I'm going to have a washer to go on this too, just to, to give it more strength there. So when I'm tightening these nuts down, it will hold that frame in place. So what I did was, is I made a little, I guess, an extrusion to where I know that that's going to be clearance for the screw and the washer. So what I wanted to do is put those there is when I put this mesh that will, the main structure of the mold itself, and there's going to be a front mesh and a inside mesh, and that's just going to be a heavy duty structure just to hold the mold, just to give it strength. So here I'm just making this extrusion here for the back mold, and I'm just going to keep recreating this. And then after I get the meshes, the two meshes on each frame, I will just mirror these two these two together. So that way I only have to work on one side. Earlier when you saw me doing some design work in Blender, when I was putting that mesh in there and I was kind of designing around the screw holes, I just really didn't have any guide to determine, you know, that I, was going to have washers with those screws. And that way I need to make some adjustments to where I can lay that mesh on the extrusion. But like here, I'm designing meshes and here I'm redesigning this mesh here as you see, and I'm doing the inside mesh first. Now I won't connect the inside till after I get the sculpture done. That way if I need to make any adjustments to it or the inside frame, I can do that. But I I basically have a shape of the creature, and I'm just trying to get a lot of this done instead of waiting till after I get the sculpture completely done. This way I can keep all the parts going at the same time. Here in Blender, to make cuts, I use a program called Box Cutter. It's a plug-in for Blender, and it works really well, and it works better than SketchUp. And sometimes it really doesn't cut well in SketchUp, and I do prefer this. But once again, it's just trying to work with multiple softwares because you get where, I guess, in a way, spoiled for, like, I love the measurements of SketchUp, just love it. And it's just hard for me to choose another software. But, in the measurements in Blender, I don't really care for. But as you see here, I'm just modeling. See, this is a flatter edge on the inside of the mole. And as you see here, I'm just sculpting, just moving the mesh around to fit that that open area there, and just match it up to the frame. So then that way I can just import this mesh into SketchUp, and then I can connect it to the frame. But as far as this, I'm having to make it higher poly. But what I did here is I just copied the existing inside mesh, enlarged it to fit the outside mesh. So that way, I'm just doing this back frame, I guess, corner, but I'm going to mirror all of it, and each, like the front frame will be mirrored and the back frame will be mirrored, and then that way I only have to work on two separate pieces. But it's coming along. It's just kind of tedious, this was, because as you see here, I'm just kind of trying to form around these little extrusion areas here, and that way I can give space for the screws and clearances and things. Just make sure that it just goes in place correctly. But once again, it's just a process that I'm making sure everything is kind of in its right position and make sure I have all the clearances inside. But as you see here, my meshes are really high poly on the outside of the mold, and I I believe what I'm going to do is reduce it, and you'll see later where I have reduced the number of polys on the outside mold meshes, because it just gives me a lot more work to do. But here's my clearances as you see here from this cutaway. But and I should have plenty of space for any detail on the sculpture. But once again, I'm not going to attach the inside mesh to the inside of the mole until I have the sculpture complete. But as you see here, the dollar, it looks bigger when you're working on it, but when you put a dollar on there at a measurement of 156 millimeters, it's a lot smaller than what you think, but it's coming along. But as you see here, this mesh has not been fitted yet to the extrusion where I have there around the screw points. Now, when eventually I print these pieces, there will be three pieces: the core and the two mold frames. And I will probably do a wall thickness pretty high, and an infield is also pretty high because I want this thing to be strong. Because I'm going to have several screws and washers connecting these three pieces together. But once again, this whole mold thing has not been completed yet because I still have to connect all the pieces together, and then I have to mirror them. And then I have to add the pour and the vent holes to each one of these frame parts. Once again, uh, I hope this helps, and just to show you what you'd have to do to make a good skin for an animatronic. But it's in the design works, and I hope I get these pretty much completed next time I make a video. But I appreciate everyone, and thank you for the support, and thank you for the likes and comment. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all have a great one. Later.